Hello and welcome to another episode of Common Ground, the policy roundtable where we discuss issues in the news of concern to Newton residents and try to hammer out some of our differences. For those of you who are new to the show, let's review the rules. First, I introduce a topic. Then we go around the table once with each panelist expressing a viewpoint. I then select the two panelists who disagree the most strongly and ask them to speak directly to one another in hopes of finding some area of agreement. At least that's the way the show usually works. Sometimes we have a bit of a special, and we do when we break our own rules a little bit. And tonight, we're going to break our rules for a very special reason. I have to say, we've now been doing this show for more than 20 years, and throughout that time, I have never been so excited about a show as I have been about tonight's show. We've had a lot of all-star cast. This is just next level tonight, and I'm very excited that we have both of Newton's outgoing state representatives, each of whom served nearly or approximately 3 decades. One, I guess, Kay Kahn has served a full 3 decades, or will have in a few months. And Ruth Balser, I believe, served 26 years, so more than a quarter century in the legislature. But to top that off, we have the two incoming, or expected to be incoming, state representatives, barring a really radical write-in campaign. I believe Greg and it would be equally unlikely that Amy would not be elected, I think. So we have Kay Kahn, the senior member of Newton's delegation at 30 years, Ruth Balser at 26 years in the legislature, Greg Schwartz, who was just elected from the 12th Middlesex District, in other words, the seat held for the past quarter of a century by Ruth Balser, and Amy Sangiolo, who's just been, I should say nominated, not elected, who's just been nominated, received the Democratic nomination for the 11th Middlesex state representative seat, the one that Kay has held for the last 3 decades. So what I'm hoping we can do tonight is talk about some of the big issues that the legislature's been dealing with and will need to grapple with in the next few years. And hopefully we can all learn a little from the experience of our two outgoing legislators and get inspired a little bit by what our two new legislators are hoping to accomplish. So without further ado, I'm going to say hello to each of tonight's panelists. Kay, great to see you. Can you see us? Kay, I should mention, is with us virtually from an undisclosed location. Now, Kay, you can tell everybody where you are if you like.
Sure. So I am currently at this very moment in Falmouth, Massachusetts, recovering from a knee surgery. So I had a knee replacement surgery 2 weeks ago, and I'm lucky to be able to be down here in Falmouth and have the ocean in my front yard and just trying to take it all in as I recover.
How are you feeling?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm feeling good. It's a long, slow recovery, but I'm getting there little by little.
Did you do the double knee replacement or one at a time?
Oh, one. I don't know how anybody could do double.
Yeah, my father-in-law did the double. I don't know. It seems crazy, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much during your recuperation for taking the time to be part of the show.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm happy to be here.
And also, thank you so much.
I just want to thank Zoo TV for being able to bring me on virtually.
And also, thank you so much for your years of service on behalf of myself, my family, and I think the vast majority of Newton residents who really appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also joined by Ruth Balser. Ruth, great to have you here.
Great to be here.
Ruth, for both you and Kay, the legislature was sort of a second career. You both came from the healthcare field. So you're, by training and practice, a clinical psychologist.
That's right.
I'm really interested to hear whether that turned out to be helpful as a member of the legislature.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things I like to point out is everyone who comes to the legislature brings their own background. And our primary job, of course, is to represent the district that elects us, but we draw on who we are and our experiences. And our professional background is a big part of that. And Kay and I, as you point out, both came out of the mental health field, which is a very small minority of people in the legislature. And I felt like it really informed the way I considered issues, and it also became one of my top priorities, mental health public policy.
Did it help you to understand where your colleagues were coming from at all?
Well, I'm not sure I think about it like that so much, but I do think that psychology is about understanding relationships and understanding people, and politics is all about relationships and understanding people. So I have no doubt that that it helps me understand and appreciate people, and it also always keeps my eye on who we're trying to make life better for, which is each individual human being, which is actually the motivation behind being a psychologist, is about recognizing the integrity of each individual.
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but I want to say the same thing to you that I said to Kay, which is thank you so much for all your service.
Thank
And
you.
I know people really appreciate it, and I'm sure you've heard an outpouring of love and appreciation during your pre-retirement tour. as
Well,
it
the
were.
great thing about retiring is a lot of people do start saying nice things about
That isn't universally true, by the way.
Oh, I see.
You're getting
you.
that.
I see, and Kay is too.
Yes, that speaks volumes, I think. And Greg Schwartz, good to see you, Greg.
Thank you, Ken.
So, Greg, your professional background also in the medical field. We've got a pattern developing here, but also a lawyer, a MD and a lawyer, and so that's going to be some, but not all of the same perspective that Ruth had. Are you ready for a big change in your life?
I'm super excited. I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm excited. So these next few months are going to be just really exciting, and looking into how to get myself ready and meet as many people as I can who are on the Hill, continue to reach out to people in the district, start to really dig down onto the issues, make sure that I'm fully up to date on where things stand at this moment in time at the State House.
Well, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming back on to be part of this.
Thank you.
Amy, welcome back to Common Ground as well.
Thank you.
Of course, I had the pleasure of serving with you, going back to the late 90s, I think? 97 you might have been elected?
Yes.
Something. And so we worked on the tree ordinance together, so I've seen you up close and personal, firsthand, doing great work as a legislator. Greg, of course, served also on the city council. Didn't get to serve with Greg. It was we were at different eras a little bit.
I served with you as well.
Yeah, right. No, we've got a lot of overlap here.
And I served with Amy.
Yeah, so there we go. We've got we can connect the dots, and we've all served in continuity. That's right. Someone at this table served on the city council at every point since
That's
Ruth
right.
was first elected in the 80s.
87.
87. So
1987.
that's wild. Right up through, Amy, you were on until what year?
2017.
2017. Well,
2019 for me.
so
Went all the
okay,
way.
you're the baby of the group,
baby.
so to speak. Anyway, well, Amy, it's fabulous having you on, and I'm so excited that you got elected. And I think that here's what I'd love to hear, because the legislature, I think people know, gets a bad rap in Massachusetts. Some of it probably deserved, some of it not. For lack of transparency and for killing bills without a hearing and having a process that some people find arcane and hard to follow. And yet, through all that morass, we've had a fabulous delegation from Newton that's gotten a lot done, not just in terms of local aid and home rule petitions, things specifically focused on the city, but big policy issues facing the state. So I think I want to start off by just, because I'm dying to know, ask Kay and Ruth what your proudest legislative accomplishment during your decades of service is. Not to put you on the spot, Kay, but do you have a proudest accomplishment that you'd like to share?
Sure. Well, I have to say that I feel that my proudest accomplishment is spending 30 years in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. It's been an incredible experience, challenging, many challenges, many times, but really to put it all in perspective, I think it's been one of the most important things you can do as a person, and to have the opportunity to give back, the opportunity to help people, the opportunity to get legislation moving forward. There are just so many issues that are important, and I did have an opportunity to serve for 12 years as the chair of the House chair of the Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities. I feel that was a defining time for me. I was able to really do so much along the lines of all of those areas, and just the ability to get important legislation passed, even though it in some cases took 7 years, some cases 20 years. It's all about being flexible, having persistence, and the ability to just keep going, and under whatever circumstances are confronting you. So
Kay, is there
I
a
really feel
Kay, is there a
very
particular
pleased
bill
that
that you can speak to as something that you're proud to have worked on and gotten through the process?
Well, I mean, there's several pieces of legislation. One that just passed a few weeks ago. It had to do with maternal health. Maternal health is an area that I've worked on. And again, just to do a little bit of my background, that I am a nurse. I'm a psychiatric nurse, clinical specialist. I have a master's degree in psychiatric nursing from Boston University. And I feel that that was something that I really brought with me to the legislature, and I think helped me in every aspect of what I did. So I was very pleased to have an opportunity to pass pieces of legislation that I think are incredibly important, and the most recent one is a whole piece on maternal health. And maternal health, it was an omnibus bill that included many, many different things. But for me, most important was the fact that I was also able, there was another piece of legislation that really kind of precipitated a lot of what happened in the maternal health bill, and that was to look at inequities in maternal health care and pass some legislation to develop a commission to really take a look at the inequities that are happening in maternal health, where we have more Black women dying during pregnancy than white. And so that really spearheaded a whole process of trying to include many different things in this omnibus bill. And some of the things that in the omnibus bill that were things that I had worked on for a long time was I was a strong believer in the ability for women who would like to have the choice of having their baby at home. What we were able to do is licensed certified professional midwives. Those are midwives who are delivering now, but they're not licensed. And so this is, I think, a big thing. It was over 20 years that I was working on this. And so I'm very pleased that that was included in the legislation that is currently, it's finalized and passed just a few weeks ago.
Signed into law by the governor?
By the governor, signed
Well,
by the governor.
congratulations on
And
getting that accomplished.
in that bill are many pieces that I think are really important in terms of maternal health that have been kind of a problem for a number of years: postpartum depression, the idea of certifying professional midwives, the idea that nurses who were actually allowed to practice independently from another piece of legislation I got passed in 2012. Where they're now able to receive the same equal pay for equal work. So physicians who are delivering babies and nurses who are midwives that are delivering babies will be paid equally by Mass Health. And so just moving a lot of things forward that I think will be really tremendously helpful in the maternal health world, so to speak. So that's a big accomplishment.
Thank you, Kay. That does sound like a big accomplishment. Congratulations on that work. Ruth, same question. Your proudest accomplishment.
So it's always hard to pick favorites, and I will be succinct, but several favorites have to do with some women's equality legislation I passed, mental health legislation, and environmental legislation, and fire safety legislation. Which of those would you like me to talk about?
Let's talk about the environmental legislation.
Okay.
How about that? I haven't had any.
It's like I love all my children
Yeah, of course.
equally.
Let's
So,
just randomly select one.
but the environmental one is very important, something I'm very proud of. It's called the Public Lands Preservation Act. And what the Public Lands, I literally worked on it for more than 2 decades. Sometimes it takes a long time to get legislation passed. What the Public Lands Preservation Act does is it strengthens and clarifies.
Nevertheless, you persisted.
Nevertheless, I did persist. Persistence is key. So my advice to you too is persistence is very important. Patience and persistence. You have to know that it'll take a long time, but you have to keep at it. This bill, Article 97 of the Constitution, of the state constitution, gives to people of Massachusetts the right to clean air, clean water, protected open space. It's a very wonderful and beautiful part of our state constitution that we have that as a right. What the Public Lands Preservation Act did was really even strengthen Article 97. There's a provision within the state constitution for Article 97 that says that gives a procedure for transferring land that was protected and you could lose it. What the bill did was make sure that if any land is lost, it has to be replaced. It has to be replaced with land of equal natural resource and financial value. So
when did that pass, Ruth?
Governor Baker signed it in 2022. And interesting you should ask, because in the legislation, it gave the administration, the Secretary of Environmental Affairs, 18 months to promulgate regulations. August 17th was the 18-month mark. The administration has not promulgated the regulations. And so one of the things to learn is, I always say politics is like housework. It's never done. Even as we speak, Senator Eldridge and I, who are the co-sponsors of the original, are
Jamie Eldridge.
Jamie Eldridge are another P, patience, persistence, and pestering. We are pestering the administration to release.
So this isn't really a partisan, to use another P. We have a Democratic governor, so it's really about following through and holding people's feet to the fire?
Yes. I would just, sometimes the legislature passes laws and then it's up to the executive branch to implement them. And sometimes you end up having to chase them to make sure that it gets implemented. So that's just
So do you think you'll still be writing letters to people after you're retired from the legislature?
No, I'm actually, they know I want this done before I leave. And it's got to get done. So they were, in fairness to the agency, they have been working on it. They've been meeting with people. They're working on it. But, there was a deadline and they missed it. So in terms of always, people criticize the legislature for missing deadlines. Sometimes the administration misses deadlines.
So you've segued beautifully into my next question. And I'm going to bring in the other panelists momentarily, but advice for our new members of the legislature, our soon-to-be members of the legislature. You've given one piece of advice. Any other advice for them? And I'll ask the same question to Kay in a moment.
Well, one is to listen to...
Sorry. Sorry.
Listen, and learn from people. There are a lot of people with all kind experience and different backgrounds, and people have different districts. Greg will be representing Brookline and part of Brookline, part of Newton, Amy Newton, and a lot of state is different from Brookline and Newton. And one thing part of the advice is to listen, to think about where other people are coming from, because they're going to be your partners. And to get anything done, you have to work with everyone else. So part of that, it will be, of course, to let them know who you are and who the people you represent are, but to listen and to get to know them and what they care about. That's an important piece.
Kay, any advice for Amy and Greg?
I think that it's, I think really getting to know your colleagues, I think is important to, feel that you can connect with colleagues. And I think that's a really important piece of it all, because in the end, you do need your colleagues to come along with you. You'll be wanting them to appreciate your legislation. You'll be reaching out to colleagues. So I think that's one of the things that is really important. And the other is to sort of figure out your own strengths, I guess, and the things that really are of interest to you. I think that that's another, I came in with a healthcare background, so healthcare has been an important part of my agenda, and that doesn't necessarily mean just healthcare. It also means the environment. The environment is part of health, so anything that has to do with health, I think, for me anyway, that's been an area that I've sort of specialized in. And yeah, so I think it's kind of finding your own place and your own sense of what feels important to you. When I first came in, for example, I came in as a mental health person, and I had a sense that there wasn't enough understanding about mental health at the time, and so I ended up pulling together, one of my interests was to develop a mental health caucus. So lots of caucuses that you can join, and I think joining caucuses on all different subjects is a good way to kind of get started and to meet different legislators who have particular interests. And you learn a lot. I mean, you're just constantly learning. I mean, even today, every day when I'm talking to my staff or I'm in the legislature, I'm always learning something. And so in that case, in that sense, that was my strength when I came in, an interest. And so I pursued starting a mental health caucus, which I think was pretty successful. Ruth was also part of that. She joined me and supported my efforts. I also kind of moved into the area of, there was another legislator who was particularly interested in, she represented Framingham. She was interested in the women who come into the criminal justice system. And so she was one of the first people that really started to take a look at the health care of the needs of these women. And I joined her wanting to look at the mental health care that was happening with regard to these women. And so when she left the legislature, she handed me 12 pieces of legislation, some of which I'm still working on. I created my own task force taking a look at the women who come into the criminal justice system. So it's really following your passions, I think, and maybe developing a caucus or a task force or finding other folks who might join with you to maybe pursue a particular area. But I think it's good to really understand what your own passions are and to follow those passions in terms of...
Thank you, Kay. Thanks very much. Well, it sounds like pretty good advice from both of our outgoing legislators. I want to turn now to our anticipated to be incoming. I don't want to step on the democratic process. You aren't elected yet. Won't be till November. But our presumptive, I don't know what the word is.
Maybe we should just clarify that Amy, if it's all right for me to jump in, Amy
sure.
just won in the Democratic primary.
They're both the Democratic nominees.
Both of them.
And so neither one has been elected. There is an election in November, and it is certain people can go and vote. They can write a name in. They can vote for.
Amy has an opponent, a Republican.
Right. Yes.
And the reason Ken is being so sure is it's unusual. It would be unusual in Newton for a Republican to win, but she does have a race, and she is in a general election.
Right. And just to be clear, Greg is not the nominee. He's the nominee of the Democratic Party, but is not a representative-elect until November. And theoretically, someone could run a write-in campaign there. I think both scenarios are very unlikely.
Yes. Don't say that.
But I mean, in my opinion, but I do. So I don't want to be too. That's
just to explain the process. Yeah.
There was a Democratic. But I think most people in Newton think of the Democratic nomination as being pretty determinative but it's not. The game ain't over yet.
It's interesting because in the years that we've run, no Republican has ever run. I've never run against a Republican. Kay has, and it's the same thing is playing out now.
It's the districts, or is it the people? Who knows?
I don't know. Amy has a Republican opponent, and Greg does not.
I don't think David ever had one either, did he? Before you? Know. I think it might be the district.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I did 3 times.
Yes.
3 times.
Republican 3 times.
Oh.
Joe Alexander, I remember it well. Right. No, that was it was the no, never. Anyway. That was the words. Never mind. I don't remember it well, obviously. All right, moving right along.
I remember it poorly.
I remember the guy. I just got his name wrong. But anyway, confusing it with the Newton Taxpayers. Anyway, the question that I would like to pose to the other 2 panelists is, do you have any questions for Ruth and Kay that anything you want to ask them about their experiences in the legislature, things you might want to learn from, or if you want to know where the secret bathroom is, anything like that.
Well, I guess, am I first? Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Ken, for having us. I also want to just emphasize what you were just starting to say, that it's not fair really to say that we're the elected ones or that we're going to be definitely in these roles. There's definitely
You
still
are
an
the
election
Democratic
coming.
nominee. I'm going to say that. Okay,
that's
I'm going to
very-
use that terminology.
I think that's very fair and very important to state because, there are plenty of people in this city and this district who, may be Republican and they might want to vote in other ways. So anyhow,
Just
question.
Establish that firmly. I think everyone's on that.
I mean, my biggest question, I think, is how long did it take either of you or both of you to feel that you were able to start contributing to the legislative process in a meaningful way? We keep hearing, oh, it's going to take a long time because there's a lot to learn, and I completely can understand that. I'm just wondering, is it years, decades, or half centuries?
I would just say you can jump right in. I agree with Kay that you keep learning all the time, and I've always said that's also one of the things I've enjoyed about the legislature, but that doesn't mean you wait. You jump right in at the beginning. Both of you, I expect, if you are elected in November, will file bills in January. I am sure that you will file legislation your first term. I did, Kay did. Either people will ask you to file bills that maybe didn't get finished, or you're going to have your own ideas, or maybe knocking on doors. You've heard from constituents some things they'd like to see happen. But right from the get-go, you're going to start contributing. You're going to offer ideas. But then, as you go, you're going to keep learning.
Sounds good.
I would just add to that.
Go ahead, Kay.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
Yes, I would agree with Ruth. You just jump in and you just do it. And for me, it was a little different than the three of you in that I had never served on the city council. So for me, it was a brand new experience.
Right.
And so I, at the time, joined what we had at the time was something called the Progressive Caucus. And it was a caucus of legislators that were sort of like-minded. And I learned a lot by joining that particular caucus. And we were all kind of on the same page, and we were bringing in people to educate us. And that's still happening. There's still a Progressive Caucus, so it's something you might want to check out. I'm still a member of the Progressive Caucus. I've always been a member of the Progressive Caucus, and I have found it a great way to really get to know other sort of like-minded legislators. It doesn't mean those are the only ones that you're going to connect with, but it's a start. It was definitely a big start for me because I had never served. So that was one thing. And then I think you will file legislation. I'm sure that people will come to you. Some of your
I got a few bills right here.
Yes, I'm sure.
I know my mom does.
Your mother, yes, I have filed.
But I would just add one more thing, and that you start in January, and by February, March, you're thinking about the budget. The budget will come up immediately, and you'll begin to think about what you can do for Newton in the budget. And people will start to perhaps knock on your door and say, would you consider filing a budget amendment to bring some back money to particular things in the district? So I think those are, when I first started, for example, the Charles River, the weeds, the non-native vegetation in the Charles River was a big concern of Susan Schur. She was helping out with that, and I took that over right away. And believe it or not, I'm still putting money in the budget for that year after year. So I'm sure that there's going to be.
You haven't gotten rid of those weeds yet?
No, and now it's Emily Norton who calls you every year.
Right, exactly.
It's like housekeeping. It's never done.
It's never done.
That's right.
Those weeds keep coming back.
They're invasive species.
Right. Amy, do you have a question for? Thanks a lot, Kay. That was great. Do you have a question for?
It's not a question so much as a comment, or maybe it is a question. So one, thank you both for your leadership and all that you've done for the district, both of your districts, because not only have you brought so much funding for much needed programs and for much needed organizations that do such good work, but you've also led on so many different issues, like you mentioned mental health, criminal justice reform, the environment. I mean, you both have just been so out there that you are hard acts to follow. So I hope that we can rely on you both to help guide us as we try to work through whatever bills we're going to try to file. I guess my comment is how you were able to get through the, you mentioned patience, but the frustration that you must have felt when you thought you were like so close to the finish line, but then something happened, right?
Well, actually, you don't even feel like you're that close to the finish line.
Okay, all right, that's good to know.
Let's set expectations right now.
So we'll
So the silver
parallel.
lining is that there is no silver lining because you're.
I mean, the important thing to remember is it's not just you, the legislators, it's the public and it's your constituents. And you're always working in partnership with your own community, with communities across the state. And they're doing a lot of the work to make it happen, right? Because nothing can happen without the public expressing a need for it. So you just keep building. If you don't get something passed right away, you come back the next term and work on it again. Or even people, I mean, Kay just mentioned that Susan Scher passed her, or Barbara Gray, someone, passed her legislation. We'll probably want to pass you guys. So, you don't get it done. Some of it, I think, just your personality. I mean, I think people who can't tolerate the pace probably wouldn't do well. Mm-hmm. But again, don't confuse that with not being persistent.
Right.
Right? Because nothing happens unless you keep pushing and pestering. I always say politics is all about pestering. You just have to pester people, to make things happen. But you work in partnership with people, and then there are always successes along the way. I think it was great Kay pointed out about the budget. Both of you are going to have constituents come to you the same way we did. So, like I've worked, with people who care about Crystal Lake and have gotten money. Kay has gotten money for Gath Pool. These kinds of things, neighborhood.
Legal services aid. I know you've been very supportive of that.
Legal services, and you get these wins. And the reason I became such a proponent of legal services was because I have so many lawyers in my district who every year on Walk to the Hill Day, they come saying that what they really care about is civil legal aid for poor people. And I should just add, one thing, just because I feel like saying it, even though it's not directly a question, I'm very proud of our district. We represent a community that for the most part is quite affluent, but their top priority is always standing up for people who are much less advantaged. So whether it's people pushing for civil legal aid for poor people, or for affordable housing for low-income people, or mental health or disability services.
It really is a privilege to represent this district.
It really
isn't it?
is. It really is. And I'm very proud of this district. It's a district that really cares. They care about, all the things they should: good schools, good roads, good transit, all those things for everyone. But they also really care about a safety net for people who need the support.
Thanks, Ruth.
Certainly noticed that on yours.
So, Kay, to Amy's question, how do you avoid pulling your hair out in frustration with this process?
Well, I'll just say, and again, it's listening to your constituents. And in fact, the reason I got involved with upgrading our 3 commuter rail stations is because it was a constituent who came to me. I think it was one of the first meetings that I went to. It was in Auburndale, and at the end of the meeting, this woman came up to me and she said, "I just want you to know that my parents come from New York on the weekends. They want to take my children to the museums. They can't access the commuter rail because they can't take the strollers down the steps, and there's so many steps. And quite honestly, I had never been on the commuter rail. So I marched over there to take a look, and sure enough, and so that was how I got started. Moving down this path of trying to get our three commuter stations accessible for people that just can't get down that number of 40 steps, to the station. So it is listening to constituents, and I think in terms of doing things for your community, one of the things that I have always found is that during the budget time, we are asked to give our three most important pieces of, or important budget amendments that we would like to work on for our constituents, for our community. And so often we get those, you know, we put forward things that we've been thinking about. Constituents have come to us about parks or areas within the district. And so usually you can get something going pretty quickly that you can bring back to your district. So I think that's something to think about, you know, going forward in the future. But yeah, I mean, it's a nonstop kind of opportunity to just keep thinking and listening to constituents, and you just have so many opportunities, I think, to work. And again, you know, it's frustrating. I mean, I'm still working on the commuter rail, you know, and it's like 30 years later, and it's been frustrating, but, you know,
You made great progress. Thank you, Kay.
Further for the first time in a long time. So, and it's that way with a lot of things that you'll find out as you go
Thanks,
forward.
Kay. I want to turn to our Democratic nominees and ask them if they get elected. See what I did there?
That was good.
And are sworn in on January
First.
1st to the legislature. What will be, I'll start with Amy on this, what will be your top legislative priority? What, if you could change any one state law, what's the first state law you'd like to change it, and what would you like to change it to?
So I really want to address, well, it's really hard because I have two major areas of focus. I have the environment and also housing. You guys passed a great housing bond bill, and I think it's going to make good progress, but there was a lot that was not addressed. So I would like to move forward with more tenant protections, homeowner protections, and whatever we can do to be more targeted, to be intentional about creating affordable housing. So that's one area, but the second area is on the environment, and I've worked with the folks who are very concerned about our gas, the continued gas infrastructure that we have, and I don't know whether I would file anything because I don't know what's going to happen with the climate bill. Right? I don't know whether that's going to get passed before the end of the year, so I can't say.
When you say gas infrastructure, what's the problem that you'd want to solve there?
So we're spending millions of dollars of taxpayer money and ratepayer money to go and put in these gas lines, you know, for the gas leaks, as instead of repairing, they are actually replacing. So we should be focusing on repairing, and then any infrastructure that we put in should be for clean fuel, clean sources of energy.
Thanks, Amy. Greg, you have a top priority, or two, go for it if you do, that you'd like to, a law you'd like to get changed as a lawmaker?
So my area of interest, at least one of them, is healthcare. As you know, coming from that background, having been a primary care physician for the last 20 plus years, I've seen so much of the problems that we're facing get worse over the last decade, certainly after COVID, during COVID, and it's mostly around access to care. We're seeing all kinds of backups in the emergency rooms and waits for specialty appointments and all kinds of difficulties getting a primary care physician. I don't presume to have legislation that would solve that, but I would love to work with some of the folks that have been working on it.
But you have concepts, right?
Yep, there's actually there's a bill that's been banned.
I got it, they did.
There's a bill that's been banging around the issues of recruitment and retention of primary care physicians, and it focuses on both the reimbursement in the Medicaid program and trying to make sure that we're actually encouraging those services to be provided by the health centers and the hospital clinics, as well as trying to retain people in the field by providing more support around the administrative side of it. As you might have seen, the Boston Globe did a wonderful series on the challenges that we're having in primary care earlier this year. And one of them, they actually quoted a study that said if primary care physicians did everything that they're supposed to do, it would take them 24.7 hours a day, which unfortunately doesn't really work. So
they just need to approach the speed of light. So the answer is really good rockets.
That, or in the absence of that technology, it's trying to figure out how we can provide better support, and to get more support, you really have to reimburse it at the rate that is, appealing. Now, of course, the budget is a budget. It's very, very challenging. I don't presume to know how we could get there, but there are these bills that have been proposed. There's one that's proposed by the chair of the Senate Healthcare Financing Committee that specifically talks about how we can expand the support for primary care, include mental health with primary care, and try to really bring some change to that nut that's so hard to crack right now, which is more and more people need primary care and they're losing access to it.
Or the other solution would be slow down the Earth's rotation, then there'd be more hours in the day. Anyway, no.
I know that you will
hard.
solve this, and that would be your first legislation.
So one way that the two of you will be able to act on these interests.
That was my question.
Oh.
Thank you. Yes. No, that was my sneaky reason for asking this question was to hear from you and from Ruth and Kay about who do they need to talk to? How do they accomplish these things? Give them a head start.
Well, step one is that in January you're going to be invited to inform the speaker of your committee choices. You're going to get to ask to be appointed to committees. And so, for instance, it sounds like you would like to be appointed to housing and environment, or maybe telecommunications, utilities, and energy. And you're going to want healthcare financing, and you didn't mention your second interest just now.
We were talking
but-
about the spinning of the earth, but
Yeah.
Sorry,
but if that doesn't happen, then there's a lot to be done on the transportation side. I've been thinking about the transportation committee as well.
So you're going to that's step one. That happens right at the beginning of the session, because the way it works is the speaker makes a committee appointment.
Does the speaker usually put people on the committees they want?
It's certainly new legislators. They really try.
They don't have revenge yet. They don't hate them yet. In other words.
That overstates, but but my experience is that they really do want to welcome new legislators.
What about Ways and Means? Is that hard to get onto still? I know back in the day it was like you had to have some seniority or.
I don't know these days. No, it doesn't have to be seniority.
So if you're interested in budget stuff
yeah,
and finance,
you could ask for that. Yes. It's interesting. I mean, the reason I'm being somewhat hesitant is usually people don't mention that. People usually mention one of the substantive, housing, healthcare, transportation, public safety. So yeah, you could
I'm actually thinking more from the national. When I worked on Capitol Hill,
Yes.
Ways and Means was a big get, and
I see.
freshmen were not allowed. I don't know. I don't actually know. I think
That
David
wouldn't
may have
be-
mentioned to me it was tougher for freshmen to get on it in the legislature.
I don't
but
know
that was
if
a
that's
ways
true.
back.
Yeah. I don't know if that's so true. But that's my first thing. And then in terms of once you're on the committee, every bill gets a hearing. So you're going to sit there in committees and hear about every bill, every idea from all points of view. You're going to learn a lot.
Well, Kay, those three issues that we've heard mentioned, rocketry, earth rotation, no, seriously, housing, environment, particularly the gas utility issue, and the healthcare reform issues that Greg raised. Any insight on how Amy and Greg might accomplish these things, other than getting on the right committees? I know Ruth may have stolen most of the thunder on this. Any additional points to add there?
Well, I would just add that if you don't make a committee that you would like to be on, it doesn't really matter. You can still work with the committee. And if you file legislation, for example, I filed, I think, a really important climate bill that I worked on with Ann Berwick from Newton to get rid of all fossil fuels in any new buildings that get built from now on. And I work with the committee. I'm not on the committee, but I work with the committee. So I think, it's great to be on committees that you would like to be on, but I think it's not the end of the world. The legislation that you file, the things that you're interested in, you can still work with the committee chairs, with other members of the committee. So it's not cut in stone that you won't have an opportunity to pursue legislation that you're interested in if you're not on the committee. So I think you have to keep that in mind, that you just go for what you want to go for. And whether you're on the committee or not, it doesn't really matter. So I would say, so I wouldn't, it's great to be able to put out when I entered the legislature, I asked for housing, healthcare, and human services. I thought, as a nurse, I should get healthcare, right? I didn't. I got housing and human services.
Right.
So, but obviously healthcare was an interest of mine, so I continued to pursue it. And I happen to be on the healthcare committee now, but I'm pursuing stuff that's on healthcare finance and on financial services. So it's you get on a committee, you go to the hearings, you listen, you participate, but it's not the end of the world if it's not a committee that that has the legislation. If you're not on the committee that has legislation that you want to have.
Thanks, Kay. I want to ask a follow-up on Amy and Greg's questions, which is, in most legislative bodies that I'm familiar with, my work on Capitol Hill and in the Board of Aldermen, and to my peripheral knowledge of the legislature, I've noticed that there's some people who develop over time an expertise in an area, and they kind of become like, oh, if you're going to work on that issue, you don't necessarily have to agree with John Smith, but you got to talk to John Smith, because that person will have the history of what's been going on and have strong opinions, and you can't not know what they're thinking on it. On the issues that Amy and Greg raised, are there any people that they should probably pick up the phone and talk to in the legislature that are the kind of go-to people on those issues?
Well, I would just, if I don't mind jumping in, a couple of things I'd make a point of. When you first enter the legislature, and I think it happens right away or even before, and Ruth, you can let me know, but you do have a meeting. You go to like a week, I think, of meetings with all the new legislators.
Yep.
So you get to meet everybody who's new. You get to learn about the process. And I think get a lot of information about how you will then want to proceed. And then I forget what the question was.
Well, let me be very specific. When I was elected to the Board of Aldermen, I said, well, one of the things I want to work on is affordable housing. Right. And I was told you can't work on that unless you talk to Ruth Balser, Sandy Schick, Linda Jordan Krause. I was just like told, these are the people who've been working on it.
I'm glad to know someone told you that.
I said, okay, I wasn't going to just like write my legislation without, well, what have you been working on? What did you get passed? What didn't you get passed?
It's true. So what was going through my mind is sometimes everyone develops their own area of expertise, and you start relying on one another, right? But also committee chair people often develop expertise, and you go to them on certain things. Now, for instance, Kay and I were known to have backgrounds in mental health, so people would in fact check with us around mental health things. I would check with certain people about climate or housing, things that I didn't know as much about. So that does happen, absolutely.
Any names in particular you'd recommend?
Well, but part of what's going through my mind is this turnover. So, for instance, one of our colleagues who's worked on transportation for many, many years is leaving, along with us, Bill Strauss, who served, I think, longer than Kay. I think Bill came in.
Met the person today
So
that's
he'd
running
be the transportation, but he's gone. But like Kevin Honan worked on housing a lot, and he represents part of Brookline. He'll be in delegation with you, but there are people like that, and you'll learn. And Kay's right about the training in Amherst. It's great. They actually take all the.
Well, maybe you'll think about this offline and give them some names.
Yes.
Later,
Yes.
People to get in touch with. I found that to be tremendously helpful. And I think a lot of people do when they join a legislative body. It's great to meet the other freshmen, but you want to know who among the experienced people have been laboring in the mines, so to speak, on a particular issue.
The other people are actually not related to issues, but who you're going to go to for help is the House Clerk and the House Counsel. They are tremendously important. The House Clerk, anytime you have a question about the rules or how to get things done procedurally, you go to the House Clerk, and he's wonderful. And House Counsel, when you draft, that House Counsel is there to help you draft legislation. You don't have to know how to do it on your own. And each of you will be assigned one staff person, but filing bills is often more than one person, so you go to House Counsel. There's lots of places to get help.
And I would also just mention there's the whole lobbying side of things as well.
Really? We have that in Massachusetts? Lobbyists in our house?
Right.
And they're helpful.
They're-
So in fact, legislation that you're filing, there may be lobbyists that are sort of interested or they're already hooked in on a particular piece of legislation. So
So
there
the
are good
advocacy
lobbyists.
organization certainly can provide some
Sure.
perspective on it too, right?
Right.
Greg and Amy, anything else you want to ask about? I got one other
Tell me.
question, but I want to get you guys back into the conversation.
Is it true that freshmen have to clean the floors? No, I guess I was just curious. I don't know if this is an easy one to answer or it's a longer answer than we have time for, but any major things that you would point to that have changed either for the worse or for the better over the long duration that you guys have been there?
Oh,
mean-
boy.
I know it's a wide open one, but, or one thing that's so much
You've got
better.
a lot of different
so-
speakers with different styles.
Yeah, I
right?
mean, I don't know what Kate would say. I mean, things change, but I'm more thinking I'm thinking of Kamala Harris saying, "Let's look to the future." I'm excited for the two of you. I
Well,
think
the last couple speakers haven't been indicted for anything after, 3 or 4 in a row that were.
each one has had a different leadership. Well, in some ways the same, some different. I've learned things from in each era and accomplished things in each era.
But how do you work with people, some of whom have very different backgrounds, and how did you overcome what for some people is a real significant stumbling block, and you got someone who's got a style that's sort of an anathema to yours? Let's say some speakers had reputations
Yes.
for being a strong.
So in the different, the first speaker that I served with, Kay served with the previous speaker. The first speaker I served with was Speaker Finneran, and he was a self-described conservative Democrat, and I was a self-described liberal Democrat, and so we were going to disagree on things. That's the way it works. But Kay mentioned the Progressive Caucus. In those years, the Progressive Caucus was very large because there were a lot of Democrats who didn't identify as conservative Democrats. And so we worked together, and we accomplished things. We used to have debates, and sometimes we won. It's been different since then because the next speaker who came along was was progressive, Sal DeMacy, and that was an era where we got marriage equality done, and we got universal health care, and we got mental health
Marriage
parity.
equality, wasn't it the SJC though, or is that?
Well, but then we had to defeat the constitutional
Oh, I
amendment.
see. Yeah, so you had,
And that was
you
Sal
had to defend
DeMacy.
it after that.
Yes,
right?
we had to keep it legal.
Right, and they tried to
They tried
illegalize it.
That's right. That's right. So a lot happened, and then I think Speaker DeLeo and Speaker Mariano have both been started out as more moderate Democrats, but have become quite liberal Democrats. I think as the years have gone on.
You trained them well, Ruth.
Absolutely. So I don't know, but you'll see. It's going to be the way it is for you.
Yeah, no, I
Well,
didn't mean to.
I would say it also depends a lot on what's going on in the state.
Yes.
Right now, the healthcare situation is pretty
The
serious.
Steward
Because of
crisis, you
the
mean,
Steward crisis. So, we went through the COVID crisis. We went through now we're going through the Steward crisis, and so there's often a crisis. There's the immigration crisis. There's often a crisis, and so it's about kind of facing those things as a team. I think as a group, as a legislature. And so there's, so it just depends on what's happening, I think, statewide that can also affect what is happening. For example, one example is, transportation has been a real problem. And I think that I have hopes that this new MBTA head person, Eng, I think he seems to be a really good person, and the first time forever, they hold quarterly meetings with the legislature. And so we have an opportunity to get on, ask questions, and sort of get a sense, and to let him know, what we're concerned about, what our concerns are. So I think under this current administration, we've been able to do that. We haven't done that in the past. So a lot of it depends on also what's going on in the state, what the general crisis is at the time. And, going through COVID was really quite a challenge for all of us. And so it's, so there's that piece of it that works into all of this as well.
Thanks, Kay. I want to see if Amy has a question, and then I've got one last one. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, you mentioned COVID changed things. So have you found that more people are not going in as much as they used to over the years, and now maybe doing more Zoom or in the district kind of work?
You know, one of the things I've been thinking is it's going to change for you. So the answer is yes. I mean, I do a lot more remote. I never did anything remotely before. I never heard of Zoom until COVID. And I was in the State House many days a week, and when I wasn't, I was in the coffee shops of Newton Center, you know, meeting people. And, you know, that changed. But I think things are gradually going back to where everyone's there in person. And I have a feeling for the two of you, it's going to be a lot more like the old days. I mean, certain things will be different still, but I think you're going to be there more. You know, over these 4 years, we've gradually, I mean, we always go in for sessions.
Right.
And we go in for hearings, although there is a virtual option. And there are briefings. But I just think there are more meetings that I think you're going to be in person a lot. That's my prediction.
Can I ask another question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. The other question is your relationship with the city. And like whether
city
it's
government?
Yeah, with city government, whether it's through individual relationships with councilors, and we have 24, right, in the city.
Enough to go around.
Right, and also like with the administration. I mean, it sounds like you have a very tight relationship with the mayor and the administration, particularly with all the money and funding that you guys have been able to bring back to the city.
Well, there are a number of ways that we interact with the city. I mean, the mayor, for instance, contacts the delegation when there's a home rule petition that needs to be filed. So the city council passes an ordinance, mayor signs it. It requires state approval, so they call us. And we have a system, Kay and Cindy and I, and it's been different people along the line, Peter Katusz and John Maughan. We kind of take turns when the petition comes in, and we always all co-sponsor it. But so we're back and forth with the city on the home rule petitions. The city always gets in touch with us at budget time to let us know if they want money, like for the senior center, which Kay and Cindy were very helpful with, and Gath Pool or Crystal Lake, and so we interact around that as well. Those are the main things I can think of. Kay, what about you?
Yeah, and I think that the mayor has called us in, maybe, I don't know if I could say quarterly, but has reached out to have us come in and meet with her and to go over things that maybe she's most concerned about or interested in, but to bring the delegation together. So that's happened. So there is that communication with the mayor's office. I work pretty closely with some of the city councilors on the transportation for the, to improve the transportation, the commuter rail system. And then, working with counselors on particular budget items, for example. So Farlow Park is in my district, and working with Maria Greenberg on getting some money for that, and different other areas of the city as well. So that's something that you do interact with city councilors from that perspective. And they're there if you need them. You can contact them and ask them to support this or that, or write a letter to support whatever you might need. So I think it's something that you can do if you feel like that you need to do it.
You know what this is reminding me of, Kay? We used to meet with the school committee once a year.
Right.
And that hasn't happened in years.
Oh, interesting.
I just thought of it.
When did that end?
I don't know. I'm trying to think if it was before COVID even, or if it was COVID. But whoever would be the chair of the school committee used to reach out, remember,
Right.
to the delegation.
Huh.
And the PTO council used to reach out.
Right.
You don't do that
So,
anymore.
no, it's time to start
So
something.
that's
start that.
there's something you can start right back up.
Right.
Right.
We're nearing the end of the show. I'm going to ask two hopefully quick final questions. First of all, we have a bicameral legislature. Obviously, a bill can pass in the House and die in the Senate. Something can pass in the Senate and get handed to the House. Any advice about working with members of the Senate, particular relationships you found useful?
Well, the first thing I would say, and I know Kay would say the same thing, is that we have had a wonderful relationship with Cindy Cream and the Newton delegation.
So she's
I
okay?
think,
You guys can talk to her
well,
now?
well, I think it's special because there are so many tensions, frankly, between the House and the Senate. And what's really important is that those tensions not play out in your own delegation. And they do in many. and they don't in ours. We've had a wonderful relationship. And Kay, I'll quote Kay, she often says at meetings that the city has benefited from the fact that we all get along so well. It doesn't happen in every delegation.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I would include John Lawn in that. He's
Yeah.
also been a good partner as well. So,
Represents
I think
two
that
precincts of Newton
we're
and
kind of
three
all on
now.
the same
Oh, three,
page,
okay.
I think, which has been good.
That's great. One thing that I've always believed about any organization, not just the legislature, but and in work and in any place you go, is it's always better to learn from other people's mistakes than to have to make the mistake yourself and then learn from it that way. Obviously, you both accomplished a tremendous amount during your time in the
You're
legislature.
not going to ask us about mistakes now, are
I'm
you?
going to ask you: is there anything looking
coming on the
back
show. That was the
you
biggest
would
mistake.
that you would do differently, or that you, looking back, would wish someone had told you when you were coming in, that you know, a way of avoiding a faux pas or a slip and fall kind of thing in the process over the years? Is there anything that you can, any nuggets of wisdom on how to avoid these things that you can share?
What do you got, Kay?
I don't know, I feel like I'm always learning. And I
Right.
often feel like, oh my God, I should have done it this way or that way. I messed up. And so I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this. There's a certain level of being pushy and nudging people. What was
Yes,
the word you used?
pestering.
Pestering. You ever feel, how do you modulate that so you don't alienate people? How do you tell what level of pestering is the right level of pestering? That to me is one of the classic problems in an organization where the squeaky wheel gets the grease up to a point.
Well, sometimes you can feel like a broken record. And I have felt that way. A piece of legislation that I was able to get done for the LGBTQ community, and I felt like a total broken record. And I just couldn't stop. I had to do it. I just had to really be that pest to get it
So
done.
is there no limit to how much pestering is good, is what you're telling us? Just pester away, basically. So you hear what you're learning here? You just need to be really annoying
I mean,
to be a good
honest,
legislator.
I think a lot of our colleagues are too hesitant to pester.
Interesting.
I think a lot of people sometimes leave things up to leadership when you really could actually speak. I mean, leadership wants to hear from people. Maybe not necessarily on the floor at a crucial moment, but I think a lot of people actually hold back more than is necessary.
Amy, Greg, any final thoughts on this, or anything that we talked about, or anything else you want to say to the folks out in the city of Newton?
What do you
We've got a
think
minute
about-
left.
Closing statements.
Yeah, I know.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Kay.
Were we helpful?
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah, extremely helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And you're going to have homework, too, because you're going to think of more things later you should have said. And you're going to email them, right?
No, we are so grateful for the advice and your leadership and everything that you've done to help teach us exactly, what we need to expect and what we need to do in order to be as effective as you guys have been. And again, big shoes to fill. So thank you, and we hope that you will. I hope I'm speaking.
You are.
We hope that you'll continue to be mentors to us.
Well,
Yeah, you've paved the way. So many people that I've already talked to at the state level say that, oh, the Newton delegation has always been super strong.
Right.
Don't mess up. So it's definitely big shoes.
Well, I think you guys are going to be great.
well, thank you, Kay. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Amy, for being here tonight. I know we've all said this already, but I have been so proud to be represented by both of you over the years. I mean, represented by Ruth. Actually, represented by Kay for some of that time.
Yes.
I was, because the redistricting. But to have you both on Team Newton and on Team Progressive and on Team just about everything I care about. That and really. When you read about the way the legislative process is supposed to work in the academic political science context, and then you see how things actually work, working with the legislature, sometimes, not always, but sometimes people get a little bit cynical.
Right.
But I would say you have both been the antidote to my cynicism
Oh, that's lovely.
on the legislative process, because the transparency and the clarity with which you've communicated and the effectiveness you've had has been inspiring. So, I know I'll be just as inspired by our new legislators if they win in November, whoever they may be. And
Can I have the last word?
sure, go for it, Kay. You've
You're
got
finished.
seniority here.
I just want to say that through my years in the legislature, I've also been extremely active in the arts and cultural community in Newton, and also on the state level as well. So I would love to be able to share some of that with both of you at any time that you're interested in. I think it's a big issue. It's an important issue for Newton because it does bring. It helps the business community, it helps the arts community, and I think it's something that we need to really do more. And I'm happy to share some of that.
Right, that's a perfect note to end on. There's a John Quincy Adams quote: "We study science and war so that we may study business and politics, so that we may study art and music."
That's lovely.
Right, something to that
That's
effect. Anyway. Thank you again. Thank you to our fabulous crew, our director, everybody at New TV. This is a wonderful community institution without which conversations like this could not take place. And thank you at home for watching and for voting in our elections. And please join us again next time when we attempt and try our very hardest to find just a little bit more common ground.